What was supposed to be a lighthearted Marvel promo has suddenly turned into something much more uncomfortable for Hugh Jackman. A new D23 video featuring Jackman and Ryan Reynolds was clearly designed as another playful moment between the two stars. But instead of generating the usual laughs, the reaction online has been noticeably harsher. Some viewers aren't laughing along anymore, they're questioning whether this entire routine has simply gone too far. And that matters because Hugh Jackman has traditionally been one of Hollywood's most widely admired stars. Ryan Reynolds, meanwhile, built an enormous amount of goodwill through the Deadpool franchise and his public persona. So why are some fans now turning against the very dynamic that once made them laugh? The latest video is built around a familiar joke. Hugh Jackman is presented as though he's reluctant to participate, while Ryan Reynolds pushes the idea that the two of them should somehow find their way into Avengers, Doomsday. Jackman even plays along with the idea that he doesn't really want to be doing the bit. On paper, it's harmless promotional comedy. But the comments underneath Hugh's post tell a different story. Some viewers criticized the routine as repetitive and overly manufactured. Others said the friendship between the two actors once felt charming, but now comes across as a carefully repeated marketing gimmick. And some of that criticism appears to be connected to the much larger public controversy surrounding Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and Justin Baldoni. That doesn't mean every negative comment comes from the same place. Some commenters are clearly reacting to the ongoing dispute, while others simply seem tired of seeing the same Deadpool-style humor repeated across movies, interviews, and social media. That's where Hugh Jackman gets pulled into the conversation. For years, the Reynolds-Jackman relationship has been presented as a playful friendship, Ryan pushing Hugh into ridiculous situations, and Hugh reluctantly playing along. Previously, audiences largely accepted that dynamic because it felt spontaneous and funny. Now, some viewers are interpreting the exact same behavior very differently. Instead of seeing two friends joking around, they're seeing Hugh being repeatedly brought into Ryan's promotional world at a moment when public opinion surrounding Reynolds has become more divided. And the D23 video gives critics plenty to talk about. In the clip, Jackman appears to make an appeal to Kevin Feige and Marvel about potentially joining the enormous cast of Avengers, Doomsday. Reynolds then points out the obvious question: if the movie already has a huge number of characters, why would they need to add themselves? Jackman's response is essentially that they're special, they're the golden ones. That line is supposed to be the punchline. But some viewers heard something else. They saw two major stars joking about forcing their way into a Marvel movie that already has an extremely large cast, and interpreted the whole thing as an attempt to remain part of the spotlight. That's important because Deadpool and Wolverine was a major success, and Jackman's return as Wolverine generated enormous attention. Yet the current Marvel promotional strategy has not centered on Reynolds and Jackman in the way some fans might have expected. Whether that means anything about their actual involvement is a separate question. But the perception has changed. And once audience perception shifts, even an old joke can suddenly land very differently. For Hugh Jackman, that's potentially the bigger problem. He still has an enormous amount of goodwill behind him. There are plenty of Marvel fans who would love to see Wolverine return and who continue to support him. At the same time, the negative reactions are becoming harder to ignore. And that raises a much bigger question. Is Hugh Jackman's association with Ryan Reynolds beginning to affect the image that he spent decades building? Because this isn't simply about one awkward promotional video anymore. It's about what happens when a familiar Hollywood friendship starts looking less authentic to the audience watching it. And with the controversy surrounding Reynolds and Blake Lively still shaping public discussion, every new appearance involving the group is being examined more closely than before. That is why this seemingly harmless D23 joke has attracted so much attention. The question isn't whether Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are actually friends. The real question is whether audiences still enjoy watching that friendship performed for the camera. And judging from the reaction to this latest video, some fans are starting to say no. But the Hugh Jackman story becomes even more complicated once the controversy surrounding Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively enters the picture. The reaction to the D23 video isn't happening in isolation. The public conversation around Reynolds has changed significantly, and that means material that might once have been dismissed as harmless comedy is now being viewed through a very different lens. Some commenters specifically referenced the ongoing Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni dispute when explaining why their opinion of Reynolds had changed. That distinction matters. The transcript does not establish that every criticism of Ryan Reynolds comes from supporters of Justin Baldoni, nor does it prove that the promotional video itself was connected to the legal dispute. What it does show is that viewers are bringing the controversy into the discussion, and Hugh Jackman is being caught in that reaction simply because he continues appearing alongside Reynolds. For years, the two actors' public friendship was one of their biggest promotional strengths. Ryan would push the joke further. Hugh would play the reluctant straight man. The audience would laugh. But that formula depends on people believing the interaction is still entertaining. Once that stops happening, the same routine can suddenly feel repetitive. And that's exactly what some viewers are saying now. They're not necessarily rejecting Hugh Jackman himself. Many still have enormous respect for him as Wolverine and as an actor. Their frustration is directed toward the constant repetition of the same comedic dynamic. The problem is that Hugh's presence makes the reaction more complicated. He's still widely associated with Wolverine, one of the most recognizable characters of his career. That gives him a strong connection with Marvel audiences that exists independently of Ryan Reynolds. So when viewers see Jackman participating in another promotional joke alongside Reynolds, some are asking why he needs to do it at all. That's especially noticeable because Avengers, Doomsday already has an enormous ensemble cast. The video turns that fact into the joke. But online audiences don't always stop at the punchline. Some interpret the decision to make the joke as evidence that the actors are eager to remain part of Marvel's next major chapter. Others simply see it as normal promotional entertainment. Those are very different interpretations of the exact same footage. And that's what makes this moment interesting. The video itself hasn't changed. The audience has. Another part of the story involves Justin Baldoni and his wife, Emily. According to the transcript, the couple recently shared photos and videos from Iceland, including a playful clip involving Baldoni modeling his cold-weather clothing. The exchange drew attention because of comments about layers and showing each piece of clothing. Viewers online connected those remarks to Blake Lively's previous fashion choices, particularly her much-discussed appearance involving multiple layers and the double pants look associated with the It Ends With Us promotional period. Whether the Baldonis intended the clip as a deliberate reference is not established. That is important. The connection is an interpretation made by viewers, not a confirmed fact. Still, the timing made the video noticeable because Emily Baldoni has generally remained relatively quiet during the broader dispute. The transcript also points to an anniversary post from the couple referencing their marriage and their wedding vows. Supporters interpreted these public moments as signs that the Baldonis may be becoming more comfortable expressing themselves while the legal conflict continues. Again, that interpretation should remain separate from what is actually confirmed. What is clear is that the dispute has created an environment where even seemingly ordinary social media posts can be examined for hidden meaning. A fashion joke can become part of the conversation. A promotional video can become part of the conversation. And a celebrity friendship can suddenly be viewed through the lens of a controversy that originally involved completely different people. That's why Hugh Jackman's situation is more complicated than simply asking whether one video was funny. The larger issue is reputation. Hugh has spent decades building an image that is strongly associated with professionalism, generosity, and his portrayal of Wolverine. Ryan Reynolds has built a very different public identity, heavily centered around humor, sarcasm, and the Deadpool persona. Those two brands worked extremely well together. But when public sentiment toward one person changes, the other person can become part of the conversation simply by appearing beside him. That doesn't establish wrongdoing by Hugh Jackman. It doesn't prove that he agrees with every aspect of Reynolds' public controversies. And it certainly doesn't prove that their friendship has changed. What it does show is that celebrity collaborations don't exist in a vacuum. The audience brings its own opinions, experiences, and assumptions to every new piece of content. And right now, that's making the familiar Jackman-Reynolds formula much harder to sell than it once was. And this is where the story moves beyond one awkward promotional clip and into a much bigger question about Hugh Jackman's public image. Jackman doesn't need Ryan Reynolds to establish his place in Hollywood. He already has one. He's a Tony Award winner, a globally recognized actor, and for millions of moviegoers, he is the definitive Wolverine. His career was built long before the current wave of social media-driven celebrity promotion. That's why some viewers find these recent videos so strange. The criticism isn't necessarily that Hugh Jackman has done something wrong. It's that they believe his participation makes him look less like an established star and more like someone being pulled into another celebrity's marketing machine. That distinction is important. A joke between friends can be completely harmless in private. Put the same joke inside a carefully produced promotional campaign, and audiences may interpret it differently. And that's exactly what appears to be happening here. Some viewers believe the Jackman-Reynolds content no longer feels spontaneous. Instead, they see a familiar formula being repeated because it has worked before. But when audiences begin recognizing the formula, the magic can disappear. The biggest issue may actually be timing. Jackman is now 56, and he's at a point in his career where he doesn't have to chase every opportunity for attention. He has the freedom to choose major films, dramatic roles, theater, or projects that simply interest him. So when he appears in another comedic Marvel promotion, some fans naturally ask why. Why does someone with that level of career credibility need to participate in a joke built around getting into a movie? That's not proof that Jackman is desperate for attention. It's an interpretation from viewers. But perception is powerful, especially in Hollywood. And once audiences begin reading a performance as manufactured rather than spontaneous, even a well-intentioned joke can become difficult to recover from. The timing also matters because the video appeared while the highly publicized dispute involving Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni was still generating enormous attention. The transcript raises questions about whether Jackman is aware of allegations and claims surrounding that dispute. But those questions should remain questions. The source does not establish what Jackman knows privately, what he believes, or what conversations may have taken place behind the scenes. What we can say is much simpler. His continued association with Reynolds means audiences are inevitably discussing him alongside Reynolds. And that creates a potential reputational problem. Because Hugh Jackman's public image has historically been built around warmth, professionalism, and his long connection with fans. When he appears in content that some viewers consider forced or overly promotional, they may feel that the image they've known for years is being diluted. Then there's the question everyone wants answered: what does this mean for Avengers, Doomsday? The transcript presents Reynolds and Jackman as likely to appear in the film and suggests that their involvement has already become a topic of public discussion. But the important point is that the promotional conversation surrounding the movie is happening in a very different environment from the one surrounding Deadpool and Wolverine. That earlier film arrived before the current controversy reached the level of attention it has today. Now, the audience is watching more closely. They're evaluating celebrity behavior differently. And that could affect how people respond when these stars eventually appear together again. Still, there is another side to this story. Not everyone is rejecting Ryan Reynolds. Not everyone thinks the Hugh and Ryan videos are embarrassing. And not everyone sees a harmless promotional joke as evidence of a deeper problem. There are still fans who enjoy their chemistry and simply want to see Wolverine return. That's why the reaction is more complicated than a simple "fans have turned against them" narrative. The real change is that the audience is no longer responding unanimously. Some people are laughing. Others are questioning the joke. And a growing group is connecting these promotional appearances to the much broader conversation surrounding Reynolds and Lively. That creates an entirely different challenge for both actors. Because once a celebrity's public image becomes part of a larger controversy, every new appearance can be interpreted through that lens. And Hugh Jackman may find himself dealing with consequences from a story that isn't actually about him. That's the uncomfortable position he's in now. He has his own reputation, his own career, and his own relationship with his fans. But every time he steps into another Reynolds-centered promotional bit, he also becomes part of that conversation. Whether that ultimately hurts him remains to be seen. But one thing is already clear: the audience reaction is no longer something Hollywood can simply ignore. And if Avengers, Doomsday really does bring these stars back together on a massive stage, the response could tell us whether this criticism is just temporary internet noise, or the beginning of a much more permanent shift in how audiences see them. So, where does that leave Hugh Jackman? For now, nobody can say exactly how this plays out. The criticism may fade. The audience may move on. And the Jackman-Reynolds dynamic may eventually become funny again. But if the reaction continues, Hugh may have to decide how much of his public image he wants tied to a promotional partnership that some viewers no longer find entertaining. And that's what makes this situation worth watching. Hugh Jackman has already earned his legacy. He doesn't need another viral moment to prove anything. Ryan Reynolds doesn't need another joke to remind people who Deadpool is. The bigger question is whether audiences still want to see the two of them packaged together in exactly the same way. Because Hollywood can create a promotion, but it can't completely control how the public receives it. And right now, the reaction is mixed. Some fans are still excited. Some are skeptical. And others are clearly asking for something different. As for Justin and Emily Baldoni, their recent public moments have also attracted attention, particularly because viewers are interpreting some of their posts through the lens of the ongoing dispute. Whether those moments were deliberate responses to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds is not something the available information can definitively establish. What happens next will depend on the legal developments, the public reaction, and ultimately what audiences decide to support. So now I want to hear from you. Did the Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds D23 video actually make you laugh, or has this promotional routine become too repetitive? And do you think Hugh Jackman should continue doing these kinds of videos with Ryan Reynolds, or would you rather see him step away and let his own career speak for itself? Drop your opinion in the comments. If you found this breakdown interesting, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because we'll continue following the story as new developments emerge. And remember, the goal here is to separate confirmed information from online interpretation and speculation. This video is for commentary, criticism, and discussion. It does not claim that allegations or disputed statements are proven facts. References to the ongoing legal dispute are presented as claims and public reports, not established findings unless specifically confirmed by reliable evidence or a court decision. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.